My name is Kurt. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. My wife and I are just started our 24th year in Johannesburg. So yeah, what a blessing to be in Joburg. Just when we think we understand this city, we realize we don't have a clue and we need to start over. So it's good. So I work with the Baptist, Southern Baptists in the U.S. called the International Mission Board, and they have sent us out. And believe it or not, another family also working here that Raphael mentioned, the Holidays. So there's two units from the U.S. here working in Joburg. They're both called the Holidays. So just when you think God is boring, something else happens. So if something bad happens and it's the Holidays, it's the other ones. If something really good happens, it's Janica. So good. So right now, currently, we are working. Let me tell you my vision for the city. Two things I would say. One is Colin's 100% right. We're not only making converts, we're making disciples. I would add to Colin, I don't have the right to do that, but I would add to Colin from 2 Timothy 2:2 that we need to make disciples that make disciples that make disciples. Right? I think my wife and I have done a decent job in 22 years of making disciples. But if we're to leave Joburg, then I think there's the step that I would like to see us at least focus on more is to make disciples that make disciples that make disciples. So I would say that. So we are working that. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say, just to introduce myself, is that Revelation 7, the Revelation 7 vision to me is huge. To see every tribe, tongue, language, people represented in heaven is the end. I mean, God says it in His Word. This is what's happening in heaven, right? So we know, even though that hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen because God said this is how it ends. Does that make sense? So if I don't know what to do, I want to work on what God says is going to happen. So I am now currently trying to work with Raphael and his list. That gives me a focus. It gives me a vision. It gives me an idea of where to be. Right? So we as in the Holidays and the Holidays are working in Yeoville, Berea, Bez Valley, mainly to try to find those people. Right? And to get the gospel to them. Ultimately, our hope is that they would get called by God to go back to their people, right? But if not, at least we're working on people groups that are having a difficult time getting the gospel to them. I do want to mention, too, another book. Amin Buzzard is probably my favorite book. Their idea in that book is that you should be able to explain your city in one word, right? And so and they actually got it wrong in their book, but Joburg, they said, was freedom, which I disagree with. I think it's prosperity, right? Why are all people coming to Joburg? Because they're trying to get money to send back to their family. Why are the guys preaching the way they preach in downtown? They all want prosperity. So I haven't sent them a letter to correct that, but that's okay. Thanks for laughing. That was supposed to be funny. Another book I would say, if you're new to inner city ministry or just city ministry, is by Tim Keller called Center Church. It's the best book I know of that affirms the gospel and how does that work out to get it pumping through the city. One other thing, I feel like I'm Colin's right-hand man today. He talked about the largest cities in the world, and if you don't know, by 2050, I believe it is, by 2100 at least, the three largest cities in the world will be in Africa. It will be Kinshasa, Lagos, and Dar es Salaam. So there's a lot of work to do here, right? So I'm thinking if those three cities are going to be the largest, I need to pour my time and energy into those people in this city, right? So I need to find people from Kinshasa. I need to find people from Lagos. I need to find people from Tanzania as well. So want to get the gospel going out. Colin said one thing. He talked about rural people moving to the city. When I was responsible for Antananarivo, or Tana as I call it, one time, the only time I've been in Tana, one of the guys told me when people come from the rural areas to Tana, they never go back. So Tana is, I think, the fastest growing city in southern Africa, right? Well, outside of Lagos and those that we just talked about. Last thing, there's a thing, a website thing. Boy, how great is that? There's a website called Wazi Map, WAZI Map. And you can put in your neighborhood or where you want to plant the next church. It will give you some of the demographic information that Colin talked about. So yeah, I think that would be helpful for you. Sure. I don't know. Probably, yeah. Okay, I think that's all that I have been thinking as these other men have talked. What a blessing it is to be here today and to try to give you some information maybe that I've collected over the years. I think reaching the city, obviously, as they've said, is important. Yes, ma'am. It's .co.za.
Thank you.
Yo, what a helpmate. Okay. If I look good, you know why. All right. So just before we came back, well, last month, Jana Kay and I spent some time touring Europe. This is London. This is, anybody want to guess out loud?
Holland.
Amsterdam. Well done. It is in Holland, you're correct. This one?
France.
No. Stockholm, Sweden. And this one, there's kind of a hint at the very top, but that's beside the point. Oslo, Norway. So my mom is half Norwegian, half Swedish. So that I went to see my roots, to see the Vikings and the guys with the big beards and all that kind of stuff. All right. So what I'm going to talk about today is basically mapping. So how do you know your city? How do you understand your city? In one of the quotes that I read was one of the first things you need to do is survey and record the lay of the land, because a map is the field work out of which strategies can be formed. So why do we map our city? There's 4 reasons. The first one is that we organize our ministry, right? Pastor Raphael did a great job of saying, if you are called. So my assumption is you are. That God is telling you, asking you, I want you to go look at that part of the city, right? I want you to go look at that part of the city. Some of your churches are looking for a new church plant, right? So if you map the city, you'll be able to go back to the church and say, we should go here because, and you should have a list of reasons. Number 1 would be what Pastor Raphael just shared. So you can organize your ministry. If we're here, we can do this to get in and those kind of things. The second one is to find collaborative partners. What a blessing it's been for me to work with the men that have been up here teaching so far. But Raphael and I actually had a coffee. I won't say coffee because I could say it every sentence, but we had a coffee in Bez Valley. And I was talking about UUPGs, and he just came up with that list of those things. So a partner, and I'm going to tell a story on Raphael. I said, man, this is an amazing list. It would take me 5 or 10 years to get this. He started laughing. He said, they're not going to give you this information, right? The old white guy that speaks weird, they're not going to say, oh, I'm this tribe. So you have to have a national partner to help you with culture and language and whatever. You've got to have a partner. You cannot do it on your own. The third thing for building a map is to find places of peace and people of peace. So we brought some volunteers from the U.S. over here. We're trying to work in Yeovil, and we actually found an Ethiopian coffee shop, a guy named Thomas. We started a Bible study there. It was amazing. And just to talk about God, I forgot who it was that was speaking, but in Acts 17, it says God changes the boundaries of countries and moves people where he wants. I think Raphael was there that day. We're having a Bible study, and a lady from Eritrea walked in and said, can I join? Now, Eritrea is on the World Watch List. It's in the top 5. It's a place that persecutes Christians fiercely. And yet, doing a Bible study in Johannesburg, a lady comes off the street and asks if she can join Bible study. That's another reason we need to be actively involved in this. And then to compile a prayer guide. As you build a map, people will say, how can I pray for you? And you can say, here's 3 things. We were prayer walking and we noticed this, this, and this, okay? So these are the reasons that what I'm about to say is what I'm about to say. It is essential, I think, to have a prayer guide. So mapping. A lot of this comes from a book called Tradecraft. There's a copy in the library. It's a great book for understanding how to do missions in a city specifically. If you have, I don't even know if we have time to do this. So let's do this quickly. Draw a map of your neighborhood. Just take a piece of paper, flip it over, and draw your house in the middle, and then whatever you would want me to know about your neighborhood in the next 2 minutes, okay? Just quickly, don't draw detailed buildings or whatever. What is happening, where it's happening. I'll try to, oh man, there's no. Are there markers anywhere? Who's the? Okay, make sure it says whiteboard, please. Ah, great. Thank you, sir. So I'll do this just so you know. Okay, so let me just show you mine quickly. Janet County, I live here. There's a bunch of streets that have houses on them, okay? So there's no major buildings, there's no apartment complexes, that kind. Well, there actually is an apartment complex over here. Next to us is the UJ cricket pitch and field hockey. I don't know how to draw field hockey, so I didn't draw it. Here is a big shopping center. Spar is there. You can get your hair cut. You can buy stuff, whatever. Here's another bunch of shops going that way. There's a mall eventually if you continue on that street. UJ, probably didn't draw it well. UJ is right there. There's a lake here and a park here. Okay? So just, that's who I am. Oh, and that's what I do. So it's important to understand where you are. If we had time, I'd tell you to draw where you want to have your next church plant. But you can actually go online and download something like this for that area or whatever. Here's the bottom line, and I'll come back to this kind of as I talk. One will gain great value from walking the streets and documenting everything. I want to encourage you guys as you make maps to walk, right? To be on site with insight. And if you can multitask, I would do prayer walking, right? So when I was helping plant a church in Braunfontein, we walked the streets there, prayer walking, kind of building a map. And we walked the street this way a bunch of times. For some reason, one time I went on the other side of the street and walked this way. And when I looked back, there's the Church of Scientology. Now, I missed it literally 4 or 5 or 6 times. We walked down this street prayer walking. But I didn't see it because the balcony kind of thing goes over and the sign was here. So I'm saying this is not something you do Saturday morning for 15 minutes and you're finished. You just need to continue to do it, right? If I'm totally honest, I build mine based on coffee shops, right? That's just who I am. I can blame it on God. He made me that way. No, anyways. So bottom line, you're incarnational, right? So what happens as you walk the streets? You meet people. And you can ask them questions. The last part of the slide is questions you can think about as you're on the streets trying to build your map. So mapping, you're going to compile a multi-layered geographical representation of the area in which you propose to be a missionary. I love that phrase, or an apostle, right? So there's several layers to the map that you're going to build, all right? And once you put all this together, you could have something like this if you're good at putting maps together. Mine are all hand-drawn, and they're very helpful to me, but probably not many other people. Ideally, the map needs three layers. You need to understand the geographical layout of the city, okay? There are reasons, the geography of a city is going to limit you in some way, right? So one thing I can tell you, if there's a major highway, people are not crossing the highway to get to your church, right? You can stop wasting your time over there, unless you have a bus ministry, and just start focusing on this. Does that make sense? All right, so geography plays a huge part in the map. The other thing is social. Now, how you put this in your map is going to be interesting and something to help you. But where do people live, work, shop, and play, right? Why do these people behave that way? And how do they behave and why, right? So we live really close to a lot of UJ students, so Friday nights it gets kind of loud around our place. Some of them are sober, but not all of them. You need to know what's the sociographics happening in your neighborhood. If I want to start a church at 8 in the morning, I'm not going to have college students attend, right? It's not going to happen. So you just need to know. Spiritually, where do people worship? What's going on? So let's go through this quickly. So the first thing, Kevin Lynch came up with the 5 elements of a city. And these are the building blocks to help us understand the city. Paths, nodes, district edges, and landmarks. So let's look at them. A path. A path is a channel along which people travel. So give me an example. How do people get from one place to another in Johannesburg? Taxis, which ride on roads, right? So roads are a path, right? Another one.
Sometimes train.
Train, all right. Train tracks, all right, good. All right, some people walk, so you need sidewalks, right? The reason paths are important is because they limit us, specifically taxis and trains, right? Your taxi goes from this point to that point. He doesn't drive through the city and see things and come over. So if you're on this route, you don't know what's happening over here because the taxi doesn't take you there. So roads, obviously, is a great path. Sidewalks, in some parts of Joburg, are a great path. If you live in Venice, there's a river. You can literally go to a meeting in your canoe, right? This is Holland. Well, it is Holland. It's Amsterdam. When Amsterdam floods, people literally skate to work. There's so many canals in Holland. That doesn't affect us, but if you're called to church plant in Holland, you'll need to know that, right? If you're in Holland, it's that cold, that's a prayer request. Trails, right? So trails are important. Now think about this. Not only is it a trail, but it's a trail for this guy to run. It's also a trail for a horse. Now, if a horse just went down the trail, you need to be careful where you walk or run or jog, right? Not only that, So trails are important. You just need to realize you're sharing those trails with other people. Buses, right? Reavaya doesn't take turns and do all that stuff. They go from point A to point B to point C, and they just keep going. So that's a path. Paths are important. Nodes. Nodes are centers of activity. They are places where people interact. where you gain cultural insight. So remember, I said you want to go somewhere where there is a people of peace and places of peace. For example, Grand Central Station, this is from a book I read. Grand Central Station is a place where a Jewish rabbi, a Catholic priest, a Muslim imam, and a Baptist pastor will all stand, wait, and move. And there's places like that in Joburg, where you have people from 4 religions standing next to each other waiting to get on a taxi or a bus or something else, right? Or they're in line to pay the cashier. It's not hard to see representatives of every nation, tongue, and tribe in one place, okay? The convergence or a diversity of people. So here's some examples. Obviously, you know the first one was going to be a coffee shop, right? But there's a lot of different people that like coffee, right? And they're going to find a place to go. Another good node is a park, right? If you go to a park, you're going to meet different people doing different things. Janica and I walk in Emmarentia. Every Sunday afternoon and a lot of other days, there's a bunch of Indian guys playing cricket. Like we just know, if we're here on Sunday, they're playing cricket, full stop. All right, now there's ladies walking by us in burqas, right? So now we have Hindus in the park, we have Muslims in the park. Janica and I would represent Christians in the park. Like there's a lot of people, there's people that don't care in the park. There's just a diversity of people, right? So if you want to find people to share the gospel with, go to a place where there's a lot of people, okay? Malls. What can I say? This is downtown. Amen. One of the ladies is speaking in the back. So this is downtown, the new downtown. I just went blank. Santon, thank you, sir. But you've got a Dutch bank, you've got HSBC, you've got a bank from Amsterdam. You've got all these different things, all these different banks in one part of the city, right? One of my friends is Japanese. He worked in one part. There's people from everywhere in different parts of the city. So I don't know anything about business, and they would want me to wear a tie, so I'm not going. But the gospel needs to go here, right? So who loves to hang out with businessmen and wear ties and whatever? Find them, train them, and send them here. Like, where is the gospel present in downtown Johannesburg? If you want to see a diversity of people, go to a taxi rank, right? They're everywhere. A great note, if you want to find a lot of people, go to a taxi rank. I'll tell you right now, if we want the gospel to hit every part of Johannesburg, not if, since we want the gospel to hit every part of Johannesburg, this is one of the answers. These guys cover every square inch of this city twice a day, full stop. We get all these guys saved and handing out tracts and playing sermons and whatever, however you want to do discipleship. These guys could do that twice a day with a lot of people, and the gospel would go everywhere. Now, that's like a vision I have. I don't know. I'm just saying, if you know a way to get into this industry and get the gospel pumping, these guys can definitely help us do that. The next thing, districts. These are areas of perceived internal sameness, right? Whether it's based on agriculture or architecture or location or reputation or whatever. So let me give you some ideas. So there is actually expectation of the people that are there, right? So if you go to Rodeo Drive or Bel Air in Los Angeles, right? When we see that on TV, they're always rich people, right? They're always spending lots of money in these designer shops or whatever. You don't think about something else there. So every segment has its own language, rules, and those all present barriers to the spread of the gospel. They can be seen analogous as people groups, right? So my wife crochets and knits and whatever. One lady one time in Jewel City walked up to me and said, "Does your wife crochet?" And I was like, "I have no clue, but she's over there. You can go ask her." And now she goes to my wife's Bible study, is growing in her faith, whatever. But I don't speak crocheting or crocheting or whatever, however you say that, right? But imagine, because that lady asked me a question, my wife has a lady in Bible study. So I don't have to know how to crochet. You can't learn how to do everything that your people do, but you need to know somebody that does so you can set them together. All right, districts. So what is this? Chinatown. Every city in the world has a Chinatown. Well, probably except in China, but yeah. That's just China, not Chinatown. There's one I pass every time I go to the airport. It's by Eastgate over there. That's where the Chinatown is here. It's important. You need to know. Red light district. All right, we were just in Amsterdam. My friend said when you go get coffee, he showed me on the map, don't go to this part right here. Right? Don't go. I need to know that because I don't need to go there. Cape Town. What a beautiful city that is. Somebody asked me, why don't you move to Cape Town? And I said, because God called me to Joburg. That's the only reason I don't live in Cape Town, is because of the people groups Raphael just talked about. But one time I was responsible for Cape Town and Joburg. I could have moved to Cape Town. A lot of people think I'm stupid, but we'll argue about that some other time. There you go. This is Soho in New York. Soho means south of Houston. This is the garment district of New York. If you want a new suit or a new shirt or whatever, you want to go shopping for clothes, this is where you go. So those are just examples of similarities in things to do. So I keep talking about coffee shops. You need to understand my theology is that you do what you enjoy for the glory of God, right? I enjoy coffee. Literally every Bible study my wife and I have is at a coffee shop. Now you may say you have lost the plot, but I have Bible studies in coffee shops, right? I love to drink coffee. If you're a lady and you like to shop for dresses, every time you go shop for a dress, the lady's like, "What? Well, I'm looking for a new dress to wear to church." Oh, you go to church? Yeah, I do. You just need to be who you are. I don't want you to do something that I'm not learning how to crotch it, okay? I'm not. I don't care how many Bible studies I can start. I'm not doing it. But I'm going to drink a lot of coffee, so while I'm doing that, I'm trying to share the gospel. We had a Bible study yesterday. I don't have time to tell you about it, at Seattle Coffee Shop at Rosebank. The way God merged like 3 or 4 families together to be in the same place at the same time to do Bible study was bizarre. I'll tell you at lunch, I just don't have time now. But I think it's important. That is who I am. That's what I do. All right, so edges. Edges are boundaries. Like I talked about highways before. These are places that divide districts, right? And so, for example, there's a train track. Train tracks divide, right? Growing up in America, I heard about the other side of the tracks, okay? I don't know what the similar saying is here, but that clearly demonstrates something about that, right? This is the most bizarre city in the world. This is Richmond, Virginia. People on this side of the city, on this side of the James River are really weird. People on this side are really cool. It's one city, but it's so divided. It's like old and new and rich and poor, and it's all based on that one river. It literally divides the people. But Janica and I were at church on this side, and I had friends on a church on this side, and it was bizarre how totally different they were. Like within 15 kilometers of each other. Like the thought process and everything, totally different. If you're ever in Dubai, like you talk about districts, like there is no way for you to cross this bridge, okay? If you want the gospel to penetrate this place, and I assume you do, it's not going to be you that goes, right? You don't have the money, et cetera, et cetera. But this is all division. Like this part of the world can't get to that part of the world. Think about this. This is a day when probably the Chiefs were beating the Pirates, and there's a bunch of people, we hope, at FNB. But these people don't have very much money, right? And these people have a lot more money, right? So there's separation at a stadium. Like these people want to be down here, they just don't have the money to do it, right? So you can see districts and division and separation and whatever here. These guys have all kinds of money. And they got TVs, and they got somebody bringing them drinks and whatever. So there's like 3 different districts at just a football match. These slime dumps are kind of getting taken down on the western end, but not really. But they're a good way of dividing things as well, right? Some of these are right by Soweto, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there. All right. Raphael said, it's up to us to go to them. I love that phraseology, go, right? Sounds like Matthew. He said crossing the boundaries is the job of the missionary, not the resident. Remember I talked about the highway. They are not coming to you. If you feel called there, you have to go to them, right? And all of those things that we just showed are boundaries, divisions. If you feel called to that, you have to go to them. Inviting people to cross an edge to hear the gospel might get in the way of inviting them to follow Jesus. They're just not going to come. Landmarks, number 5. There's only 2 more. How much time do I have left? I'm good. All right. Sweet. I'll just keep talking about coffee. Landmarks. It's anything that stands out as noticeable. Like this one, I love this. So you just need to understand about me. I don't know a street name in this city except Malabongwe, because we sing about it like every 4th week. I don't know why we sing about a street in Rosebank, but we do. Anyways, there are things that are notable. So if you think globally about landmarks, like what city is this? Rio. Everybody knows it's Rio. Like there's no other city that has Jesus that's like 10 stories tall, probably 20 stories tall, right? Anybody know what this is? London. Yeah, the bullet is famous. If you're from London. Anybody know what city this is? Sorry? Barcelona. This church they've been building for what, 200 years? And they have like another 75 planned. It is a fascinating church, I'm telling you. Just the tour to go in there is worth the money it costs. It is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just fascinating. So there, everybody knows that church. Anybody know where this is? So what? Just how many people have jumped off of this? Just 1, 2, 3. Wow. All right, we're just going to stop and pray quick. No, I'm just kidding. I've actually jumped. I just didn't jump here. But everybody knows this is Soweto, right? You see the water towers. And actually, we know it's Orlando, Soweto, right? It's not Dobsonville. It's not whatever. And this, it's already been said, right? When Americans come to help us do ministry, we always talk about this because what's that movie? I always forget the movie. Avengers, the Avengers movie. Ultron, Age of Ultron. That movie makes no sense. Like in the middle of the movie, they stop and the helicopter flies over and you're like, oh, they're in Joburg. And then they have the big battle and then all of a sudden they're at like a game farm in Mpumalanga. And you're like, it has nothing to do with the movie or anything, but it's a great scene. So everybody knows Joburg and everybody knows those 2 iconic things. I will say this. If you want to have a great prayer experience for UUPGs, go to the 52nd floor of this place. You can see it looks out over Berea. Yeovil, Bellevue is just there. And you can, if you're a little crazy and like put your head out and look, you can see the Bez Valley down here. Like most of what Raphael talked about, you can see from this top. And for me to see something, it makes it easier to pray. What a phenomenal place. We can help you with that if you really want to do that. The last thing is high places. I don't know how much this applies to Joburg, but please tell me. But usually the most important buildings are built at the city's highest points, right? Whatever the city literally looks up to is historically, culturally, politically, geographically, spiritually relevant, right? They assign the meaning and the value to those places. So, like, who do you think runs this city? Whoever lives here. Now, whoever lives here doesn't really matter, right? You can do my laundry, you can whatever, but this is the place of all power and authority. The Acropolis, Like, if you have ever been to Athens, Jana Kay and I were in Athens in February. What an amazing! And we actually went to Corinth. Who read? Was it you that read Acts 17? Joe, it just brought back great memories. Like, it's just phenomenal. This is Mars Hill right here, I think. And just standing there and reading Acts 17 blew my mind. But anyways, you can imagine if you're in Athens, and there's actually over here is the tallest part of Athens, but nobody cares. Like, it's all about this. I think, is this Nike? Yeah, this is the temple of Nike. So it's just like,
Wait, no, I lied.
she lied, it's this one.
Right there.
Yeah. So this is the temple of Nike.
That was the old.
So these are all temples, all gods, everything. Everything in Athens looks up to these guys and gals. This is where I was born. I was born in, somebody take a guess, St. Paul, Minnesota. This is St. Paul Cathedral. It's the highest point in that part of the world. This is the Mississippi River, right? I'd be embarrassed to tell you when I figured out St. Paul, Minnesota was named after St. Paul. But I grew up Methodist and they didn't really explain that stuff very clearly. All right, what about this? I mean, look at this whole city. The whole city looks up to that church, right? So you got to know, how do you live in this city and not be a part of that church? It's almost impossible. But yet, if we don't think this is an evangelical church, we have work to do. Obviously, Hollywood is up at the top of Los Angeles. All right, so mapping the spiritual layer. Temples, churches, mosques, idols, occult. So on my map, I don't know about your map, but on my map, this right here is Pastor Chris. So they have a night of bliss there every once in a while. There is a cult right here. Another cult. Across the street is... starts with the H. Which Baptist church is that? Dang. Heritage. Heritage Baptist Church is right here. Roosevelt Park is back that way. I don't remember a church that way, to be totally honest with you. There's Hope. Yeah, Hope Church is here. So you can kind of look at, there's at least two cults and at least two churches kind of where we are. So it's oh, great. What an amazing woman. All right, so there's a hill that surrounds me, and there's always ancestor worship going on. They do a little bit of Sangoma training here, right? So this place is a lot of ATR and whatever. So yeah, we're surrounded by that as well.
What's ATR?
African traditional religion, Sangomas and that like. So if I was to get my wife to draw this nicely, this would be a good prayer guide, right? I could tell people, pray for these people, this cult, and this cult. We're surrounded. Our house is right here, and there's all of this. Pray for this church to keep preaching the gospel and to affect that community. Pray for this church to outreach to the campus, right? Well, what are the goals for my ministry? Student ministry is on my list, but there's so much UUPG work, it just seems like I don't get there. But I know campus outreach is here, whatever. Pray for them, right? So you can make a list of things to pray for just looking at this, right? Do you see how to do that? And then distribute it as a prayer guide. Go to one of your maps. If you want, you don't have to do this right now, but you can eventually do that and start labeling the edges and whatnot. So this circle comes out to, babe, what's the name of this street?
Main, but it turns into
Bayers Nadia. It's a very busy street. So it is one of our paths, right? And it's actually a node. UJ is pretty much a node, right? So if you're a student, you can get on that campus. If you're not, you can't, right? So there's some delineation in who can go here and who can't go there. But if you want to meet students, you can go to this mall, Campus Square, because they're all over the place, right? So even though I can't get into that place, I can get into this place to meet the people. So there's ways to look at the different levels. All right. This is a like symbolizing point. So what Raphael was talking about was UUPGs. So these are all people groups in sub-Saharan Africa that are unreached with the gospel. So if you haven't had a missions class yet, unreached means less than 2% of those people are evangelical, right? So that we have to draw a line, they had to draw a line somewhere, and that's the definition. The reason they did that is because they assume if 2% of a culture is evangelical, the gospel can flow from them. But until they get to that point, there's just not enough workers and good theology and whatever. So that's where you get it. So UPG is unreached. There's less than 2%. UUPG is unengaged, which means not only are they unreached, but nobody's working among them to plant churches. So this is actually shocking to see how many red dots are here. And the bigger the dot, the more people. You can look at that later if you want to, but that's one way to do a map. Another way, the percent of the population. So this is Rio de Janeiro. It has most of the people, right? Sao Paulo doesn't have nearly as many, except the one. So this will tell you like how many people are here. If that's important to you, you could do this. We could do this in the inner city probably. Just look at different places. There's more people here. There's less people here. Somehow, you have to decide where you're going to target, right? If you don't know, more people is probably a good thing because more people need Jesus, right? I'm not saying that's the only way you make a decision. I'm not even saying it's a great way, but it is a way. So if the percentage of population is big for you, that's it. I would ask the question, how many churches does your city need? And you could actually do a map like this. So where I've put the churches here, you could actually look at your part of the city and put dots where the churches are. All right? So if this is my city and I'm responsible for getting the gospel to spread, I'm not putting a church here. Okay? I'm putting a church up here. I'm putting a church here. I'm putting a church here. So you see what I'm saying? So if you know where the gospel is, and those are healthy churches getting the gospel out, I suggest one of the things to pray about is like, God, what is happening in here? Where do you want me to go? Because God is going to answer your question. But I think that's for me, that's a great map to start an overview to get to a map that's a little more specific. This one. So going back to China, so this is Chinatown. This is in San Francisco, okay? So if you assume all the Chinese live in Chinatown, you'd be wrong because there's as many Chinese people in this part and in this part, right? So if you're called to reach the Chinese, you need to think about 3 parts of San Francisco, not just Chinatown. That's why you build a map. That's why you do the legwork to find out where are these people? How do I get to them? Right? So if there is a church in Chinatown, there's still a lot of places where the gospel needs to go to Chinese in San Francisco. And the only way to figure that out is to walk the streets and to do that. All right, here's the questions. Dr. Soto, can you get this to them, or do you want them to write me?
You can send it to me, I'll oversee it.
Okay. You can drag it on your computer when we're done. So you guys can get this. Here's some things as you start building a map in a specific place, right? So you've prayed, you've asked God, where do I work? You've written Raphael, and he says, I don't know of a church there. These are the people that live there. And God has said, yeah, I want you to go there. I want your next church plant to be in that area. You start walking the streets, you meet people, you talk to them, drink a little bit of coffee, whatever. So these are some questions you can ask. What are the invisible dividing lines? What are the boundary markers in your part of the city? Right? So when we prayer walk with Raphael, we go up to the school and then we turn left. Like we don't go through or over the school. There is a dividing line at that part of Bellevue, right? So we do that. So that you kind of know. What age, race, gender do you observe? So if there's a bunch of little kids, that changes your focus on how do you reach that part of the city. If you don't see any kids, that changes how you reach that part of the city, right? So you need to understand that. Do you pass any churches or religious buildings? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are there any new churches? Are they all ancient churches? Or what's happening in that deal? I didn't put it in print, but are they evangelical, right? Because these can be partners. Like, I mean, how many times did Raphael talk about working with Colin? Like there's a partnership. Those guys work together in that part of the city. Where can you find that? Where are the places of life, hope, beauty, and community in this neighborhood? I think this is a huge question. I remember doing the study from Blackaby, Experiencing God. He sums up his book basically as where do you see God working and go join him, right? I don't want to say I'm a negative person. You could ask my wife, I may be, I don't know. But it's easier for me to walk the streets and see poverty, to see hunger, to see a building collapsing, to see all those negative things. And they're there and you have to deal with that. I want to suggest, if you're like me, you want to look for the positive. What is God doing in this part of town? Where are people have joy? Right? Where is their hope? Where is their beauty? What is the cool, nice place of this town? What are the gospel centers? And which centers are opposed to the gospel? Right? You guys will know, if the more time you spend on the street, that will become obvious to you. Where do people spend their money? All right? How are they financially helping that community? Or do they always leave to go shopping somewhere or whatever? What do people do in their free time? Like I said, Janica and I, every Sunday we walk at the park. The Indian guys are playing cricket. Every Sunday. Right? So if I felt called by God to go work with Indian people, I would be at my park every Sunday. All right, what evidences of struggle, despair, neglect, and alienation do you need? All right, it goes back to Terrell's speech or presentation, whatever you call it. We want to get the gospel. We also want to help need, right? So those are things we need to do. So I just want to encourage you to go to a part of the city and to ask questions while you're walking. When I have volunteer teams, we walk one block, maybe two, and then we stop, which looks really weird in Brom. They're like, why do these white people always stop at that corner? But I keep asking them, what did you just see, right? And actually, when we're on a prayer walk, I'll say, which part of the Lord's Prayer does that apply to, right? If you don't know how to pray, Jesus said, I think you should pray this way. If you know how else to pray, that's fine. But if you're confused, like, God, I just saw this and it bothers me. How does that relate to the Lord's Prayer? So we literally go one or two blocks. What did you see? And let's pray. Right? So again, the more people that go with you, the more eyes are seeing, which is very helpful. Right? So I want you to see that. So prayer walking is, and I already said about that. Good. I think I am done. So I would suggest you guys think up some great questions for the other three guys that have presented. And I'll either give you a thumbs up or thumbs down on if I think it was a good answer.
We want to thank you very much. Thank you.